So what unfolded just this afternoon in Europe versus Russia is I called it a death blow. I think this really is a death blow to Europe. And frankly, I think honestly, Russia called the EU's bluff on this, which is around cutting off gas prices, right, and capping prices. So basically, the G7 nations were saying to Russia, "Hey, what we want to do is cap the prices of gas, right? We're not going to pay anything more than what we want."
Right.
Or
What they've been telling them is we are sanctioning you. We don't like you anymore. We are going to stop using your oil, but we need it for now. So we're going to put a cap on the price, right?
Right.
And so within the last few days, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been down for scheduled maintenance. In the meantime, Europe kind of freaked out that Russia would not turn this pipeline back on because of the extreme dependency on this pipeline. And now Reuters is reporting that the Russian gas company Gazprom has sent a letter to at least one European market. We are surmising that it's Germany because Germany is the major recipient of this pipeline, and said, we declare what's called a force majeure. We no longer have to honor our contract and send you oil at all. We don't like doing business with you. We decide that this is a force majeure ending of the contract. How do you like them apples?
So Gazprom, this is how Zero Hedge reported it. If you want to take my laptop here, Phil. Gazprom reportedly declares force majeure will halt gas flows to Germany indefinitely, already just days before July 22nd, European Doomsday, when the scheduled Russian 10-day maintenance of the crucial Nord Stream 2 pipeline is slated to end, but which was thrown into deep doubt given the fact that Gazprom recently said it could no longer guarantee its good functioning. So now this force majeure, let's talk about what is a force majeure. Basically, well, I want you to give me the definition, but simply put, Gazprom declared extraordinarily and extreme circumstances to void itself from contractual obligations to its customer. Basically, the gas will stop flowing. So already you're seeing companies saying, hey, we're going to have to reduce the amount. You have to turn off the lights.
Yes.
You have to turn off the lights. You have to turn off gas. You can't cook at certain times now.
Well, we saw that just last week. We reported in the newsletter about how a German landlord is saying that you can only put your thermostat to, was it 17 degrees Celsius?
7. Well, yeah. That would be the cap. It'd
right.
Be like
they
17,
capped it at nighttime. So right. I'm sorry if you're cold. These are the conditions under which we will all live this winter. Anyone who lives in this, and this is the biggest property owner in Germany, so anyone who lives in those apartments at night will not be able to spike their thermostat. They better buy extra blankets. So we're seeing real life changes due to our dependency on foreign oil right
so
now.
Limiting everything from limiting hot water to shutting down swimming pools to, if you're thinking about first world problems, right? If you're worried about your German swimming pools, there's a lot of other problems in the world, right? To quite literally dimming street lights as it entered alarm stage over this dwindling supply, as Zero Hedge is reporting. They've, really taken unprecedented steps in anticipation of enduring Russian gas halt, essentially dimming the lights across the country. And this is going to have dramatic reverberations across Europe and into the United States of America as well. And again, so this sort of dance, right? You're calling Putin's bluff on this. The EU and Ursula von der Leyen were calling Putin's bluff on this. Like, hey, yeah, here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep buying our stuff from you, but we're going to cap it at a certain price. And you will go along with this. Oh, and by the way, you will also use our currency, our euros. Here you go. The Russians are like...
Well, they were buying sort of tokens from Gazprom after Russia had decided that Gazprom would only accept money in rubles. But this is really interesting move because who's to stop them from doing this, right?
Who's to stop who?
Who's to stop Russia from saying, well, then we don't honor this business contract anymore, right? Is there an international... surely within these contracts, there is some kind of international court there's always some kind of clause in a contract that says if either party fails, this will be litigated where, right? But where are those now neutral places that either of these nations would agree to? Would they even care, right?
Right.
Can they even do this? It's interesting because when you look at what the definition is of a force majeure, it has to be, can we put it up? I just screenshotted this from Investopedia.
Here it is.
Yes, this one here. It says that it needs to be, there are three definitions. It has to be, I'm sorry, I need to start bringing my glasses.
Yeah, good idea.
So irresistible is one of them, meaning you couldn't change it, right? There's no way to stop it. Unforeseeable is another definition of a force majeure, or external, meaning you could not affect it, right? And so that's the one that I'm kind of hung up on, because for Russia to say, look, the war is a force majeure, it really is, I was going to say COVID in many cases was considered a force majeure for many business contracts, right?
Right.
Many businesses could not carry out their obligations because COVID came along. A hurricane is a force majeure. Clayton tells me I brought
No. I'm telling you to use your microphone.
Oh, okay. He went like this, and I thought that meant
you're
drifting.
She was drifting away from the microphone, and when you drift away from the microphone, this is what happens. So
I'm trying to look. Okay, I'm trying to look
back
at you. Anyway.
Yeah. So that you could say the pandemic was a force majeure. You could say a tsunami. This is a force majeure.
Yes.
Again, yeah. Who's going to stand by and say? But what Russia could say? Wait a second. We've told you not to send these long-range weapon systems into Ukraine and to fire upon us, which they've hit these HIMARS that they've been now sending into Ukraine over the past 24 hours. These heavy weapons, right? These long-range heavy weapons that can fire inside of Russia. Russia has said, their state television has said, hey, we have now knocked these out. So stop sending these things, because we're just going to keep blowing them up.
Right,
so,
and we don't want to sell you gas to
right, exactly.
send those in, right?
Think how ridiculous. I'm trying to think of like like an analogy, like with my family, like how ridiculous this would be, right? Like, okay.
Well, it'd be like giving cousin Eddie gas, to come back to your house for Christmas.
Right.
Like, no, I'm not going to do that. The National Lampoons.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like if you don't want that actor to be in a certain place, you don't give them gas money.
Philip, can you think of like a good analogy, or anyone in the chat, anybody comments, please?
I can.
I'm trying to think of like a good analogy.
I actually, I brought this up in, like several months ago, I brought this up, this analogy, because it is how I see it. It's like why it's so interesting that Europe can tell Russia that we don't want your gas anymore next year. And it's like, it's like a bunch of kids. It's a bunch of kids playing ball, right? They're all playing baseball, but only one kid has a ball. And nobody else wants to play with that kid. They're like, hey, you're not allowed to play baseball with us once we get our own baseball. But if you could at least hang around and we could use your ball to play until we get our own baseball, then you're out. You're totally out after that. And that's kind of like a simple analogy for it. But it just blows my mind that once Germany came out and said that, I mean, it was a couple months ago where Germany came out and said like we are totally going to cut off Russian oil next year.
Right, next year. But for the meantime, we're going to continue to buy your oil and also send weapons to fire into and kill your citizens as well. Like, we're going to continue to do that. Meanwhile,
we're going to use it, right? We're going to use that gas.
Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency, the IEA, released their report back. You can take my laptop here, Philip. Back in February. This was literally right after the invasion. So they already had this 10-point plan to reduce European Union's reliance on Russian natural gas. So let's go through this 10-point plan. Let's look at what they said back then. Meanwhile, they didn't do any of this, right? No new gas supply contracts with Russia. They still put those gas supply contracts in place. Remember, Ursula von der Leyen even did. Replace Russian supplies with gas from alternative sources. Did they do that? I don't know.
No.
What else? Introduce minimum gas storage obligations to enhance market resilience. Where's that? Where's the surplus so we can actually make through this winter right now? Accelerate the deployment of new wind and solar projects, because I love how is there any mention? Oh, here's some nuclear information. Germany, by the way, cut off and shut down their nuclear power plants, right? Just in time, literally just in time as the Ukraine war was starting. Maximize generation from existing dispatchable low emission sources, bioenergy and nuclear. But you know what? Germany did the exact opposite, which was shut down their nuclear power plants.
At a time when Russia was actually ramping up nuclear production.
Yeah. Enact short-term measures to shelter vulnerable electricity consumers from high prices. Okay. Speed up the replacement of gas boilers with heat pumps. Accelerate energy efficiency improvements in buildings and industry. to accelerate that. Yeah, get on that, because that's going to, that takes like a decade, right, or longer to try to do that. Encourage a temporary thermostat adjustment by consumers. So we're already doing that. And cross-cutting.
I mean, how temporary though, right? Because now it's a necessity. It's not just a sort of weaning ourselves plan. There's nothing there.
Also, how about like tap into our own natural resources? No, we can't do that. Like, that's off the Great Reset agenda now, because the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab have spoken. Like, you can't do that. You can't tap into your own country's natural resources. Oh, and you can't use nuclear energy, which we now know how safe that is, right? So, no, you can't do any of that.
So I think this begs an important question for those of us who don't live in Germany is, will these kind of measures come to the West? Will our dependence on whatever energy we're dependent on right now, could that happen here, right? Wherever you are here.
What do you mean by that? I mean, we're already seeing in the United States a total collapse. Like, we literally sitting on, we're literally sitting on mountains of resources that we're not using, right? And instead, President Biden flying to Saudi Arabia, doing this ridiculous dance with a known killer, basically, ordering the death of, think about the thousands of people in Yemen and Syria, and Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, like literally going there and bowing down and bending the knee with the Saudi prince and the Saudi regime, begging for oil at a time when you literally are sitting on mountains of oil in the United States of America.
Right. I guess I wasn't specifically asking about oil, but any resource, right? Any resource that we're used to. We continue to be warned about grains and oil, cooking oil, as well as gasoline. And so if this could happen in Germany, which is just known as, I'm sorry to use this expression, this is what comes to mind, a well-oiled machine, right? Then can it happen anywhere where you will then, wherever you live, be capped at your ability to heat or cool your house during extreme temperatures, or what you can buy, or where, yes, the pools you can swim in, or anything like that. Is this coming for all of us? Yeah,
I mean, look, people are saying right now in our chat, let us know. I mean, Sri Lanka, right?
Yes.
Ireland, it's gonna happen all over the place.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, let's talk about President Biden's Saudi Arabia trip, right? His trip there to get Saudi oil. That was the whole point, right? Was to go there and ask them to increase capacity, lower prices, get us oil, right? That was the fist bump heard around the world right there. Of course, when they did that fist bump, by the way, the Saudi press office was the one that released that fist bump photo. Like, they pushed that thing out as quickly as they could. And so that fist bump boom moment was because of the Saudi office pushing that out. So his Saudi trip was a disaster. It yielded no oil and no push to end the conflict in Yemen. So here's the fist bump again. Let's watch this. Boom. Photos there. They made sure that was perfectly staged to send out. So, and the Saudis couldn't. The Saudis came out and said, we can't expand, right? They already said that we have no capacity, right? Saudi Arabia cannot expand oil production beyond 13 million BPD.
Well, because this is already an agreed upon number with OPEC. They could, right? But they've decided not to, and they don't want to tap into their profit margins.
Well, let's go through this article, shall we?
Okay, go through the article.
Oh, put it back up on the screen. Sorry.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, no, I thought you were going to go through it. So go through it here. Let's take a look at this. Right, Saudi Arabia will not have any additional capacity. So they have this 1 million additional that they can work on by the year 2027. But that's going to take a while. Like, they are not ready for it, and they have this agreed upon price tag. They are not moving forward on it in any kind of capacity. And this is where we're stuck. Rand Paul tweeted about this. He thought it was a disaster to go into Saudi Arabia. Here was Rand Paul saying this: Saudi Arabia disregards basic human rights, slaughters innocents in Yemen, horrifically murders dissidents, puts millions on the edge of starvation, and supports and strengthens our enemies. He goes on to say, yet Biden kowtows to them to try and fix a crisis of his making instead of changing policies here at home to fix domestic oil production. And then he goes on to say, how many uncontested arms sales are they going to get out of this? How many more lives in Yemen will it cost? You could also mention Syria, and just to appear as if he's helping. And literally on the same day that this happened, I didn't put it in the show, but there trailer after trailer after trailer of oil leaving Syrian oil fields. The very same Syrian oil fields that the United States lies about and pretends that they are there simply guarding. That's what they say publicly, that the United States has 2,000 troops just guarding those oil fields so that they're protected for the Syrian people, which the Syrian people don't get access to, that the United States steals the oil and then drives it out of there. That's what happened over the weekend. Literally, semi-truck after semi-truck after semi-truck leaving these oil fields to ship oil where? Who knows where? We're probably selling it. It'll be amazing to see if it winds up in the United States, but we literally go into Syria and steal their oil.
Well, the White House is doing a victory lap about this trip to the Middle East, though, saying that it actually brokered ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel, opened up airspace that wasn't open before. Okay. So I guess that was important.
Good.
Who had that on their wish list, on their 2022 goals?
So that means, flies Air Force One 7,000-mile jet trip to beg Saudi Arabia for more oil capacity, when at the very same time the West is putting draconian sanctions on Russia, driving up the cost of everything, yes, right, ruining the economy back home, but flying to Saudi Arabia to kiss the hands.
And setting the example for the rest of the West that does what the United States wants, right? So the EU and the UK now considering putting more sanctions on Russia because that seems to be going so well for them, this time on gold. They're meeting today. We'll know what that meeting results in short order. But at the same time, it's interesting that the sanctions just keep piling on, and it's having absolutely the boomerang effect of harming the citizens of the countries that are doing it.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit more on that. So yeah, the EU is meeting this afternoon. They have this discussion. Tomorrow, we might learn whether or not they add additional sanctions against Russia. So today was just the discussion phase of it on Russian gold and additional sanctions. It's done nothing. It's done nothing. What's happened? The value of the ruble has gone up, right? If anything, we've seen the fracturing of this liberal world order, and these globalists we've seen the uprisings in the Netherlands, Sri Lanka, Albania. We're seeing it in Panama now. We're seeing it all over the world. I mean, when are they going to learn their lesson? And so then you see what's happening in Russia, and you see that their economy is doing well. You see that they have made significant ties now in areas maybe that hadn't fully solidified before with India and China. Mm-hmm. It's like a reordering of deck chairs on the Titanic at this stage.
Yes. I mean, it feels like that. So, and I'm watching headlines today of CNBC and Wall Street Journal saying that the dollar is so strong right now, but it's really not. It's just that most Western currencies are down and the dollar is sucking the least, right? So we're calling this we're patting ourselves on the back.
Right.
For winning the losing race, and I find that very interesting when you look at sort of Eastern markets that are not suffering from these government crises, government-made crises.
Well, and you think about the way in which their currencies are tied to actual physical things like gold. Russia has as close an economy tied to gold as any major government currency does Russia. And think about as a gold standard, right? So the United States doesn't, right? We were taken off the gold standard in the 1970s under Nixon. Russia is as close to a gold standard, while not actually technically on a gold standard, but it really is almost a ruble to gold scenario in Russia. Why do you think they've been buying up so much gold? Why do you think that China has been hoarding as much gold as it can get its hands on?
Yeah.
Right? So again, you have these currencies and these economies that in many ways are tied to physical precious metals and other things like that, while the United States is on thin air, $30 trillion in debt. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc. Not .com.